Okay. So you're asking, if we look 10, 15, 20 years out, which is what we were looking at in the Supply Chain 2020 project when we got started. And, one thing we learned from the project was real simple. 10 to 15 years out, you can't forecast. Okay? So the reality is that there's uncertainty in what can happen in 10 to 15 years. And so we actually, from a project perspective, looked at it from what we call scenario planning. Look at the futures and then bring it back, possible futures, 2 or 3 possible futures, bring it back to reality to today and say, what does that mean for today moving forward? And the reality is there's a lot of uncertainty. So what does the supply chain have to look like? You can't predict what it's going to look like. What you can predict is how it has to act, in the sense that we as supply chain professionals have to be ready for whatever future happens. And so we have to put things in place that do a couple things. One is the flexibility story, in the sense that if we live in a fragmented global trading environment rather than a true global trading environment, we have to be able to handle that. So we have to have capabilities for local supply chain as well as global supply chain. And if you think about it conceptually, you got to have both. You can't assume that we're going to have total global supply chain, and you can't assume we're going to have totally fragmented supply chain. You got to be ready for both. So you have to recognize the fact that supply chains in different parts of the world are going to be different. For example, I always like to talk about, developed worlds may have one kind of supply chain. Developing emerging markets may have another supply chain. And developing countries are going to have a very basic supply chain. Their infrastructure is a lot different. So the supply chains that we have to create in the future have to accommodate all three, because we're going to have countries at different stages of development, infrastructure of the supply chains at different stages of development, cultures, people are all different. And so to assume one solution is going to work for all is the wrong solution. So you can't predict what it's going to look like, but what you can predict is the supply chain, whatever it is, has to accommodate all those different kinds of supply chain environments, right? So that's the first thing you do. The second thing you got to think about is we do know that demographic shifts are such that the world will be older in general. In other words, demographics of the world are going so that there'll be more older people like myself and over time, and so therefore there will be some shifts that we do know about, and those are shifts in those older people need different products and services. So you need a supply chain that now accommodates the elderly needs a lot more than current supply chain. So things like monitoring their health in the home, tying that back to the health provider, monitoring the diet in the home, tying it back to the grocery providers,